Hellcat.
Hello, welcome to another episode on Sport is for the People. I'm joined by Ryan today. Brian.
Hey up.
Hello, Nick.
Hello.
And our big celebrity for the day, Tendai from P-Town Radio. Hello.
How you doing?
Not too bad. So today we're going to touch on racism in sport, and we might touch on a bit in general at the moment, considering the worldwide situation. So I'm just bringing this up because of a few comments made by Raheem Sterling, Anthony Joshua and Lewis Hamilton recently. I'd just like to read the Anthony Joshua speech, and then we'll get your thoughts on it. So Anthony Joshua said, "We should show them where it hurts. We must not use the demonstration for selfish motives and turn it into rioting and looting. We need to be united in non-violent demonstrations. Show them where it hurts, abstain from spending your money in their shops and economies, and invest in black-owned businesses. And that's for all communities. If you want to uplift yourselves, invest in your own businesses." So pretty powerful words there from Anthony Joshua. So I'll come to you first, Tendai, since you're our big guest for the day. So you can kick off.
No worries. Thanks for having me here, Keaton.
No worries.
Appreciate it. I can see where he's coming from. In a sense that if we go back into history, the slavery back in the days kind of work hard. Slavery, which means people coming from Caribbean, African, on the chains and things like that, to come here to build the likes of all these big buildings, old buildings, for example. Mm-hmm. So that was the best of so many hard labor, if you want to call it. Now things have moved on from there. Now we have a time whereby the platform was made, the freedom now we have of speaking right now, even talking about this now, including of course the white people during the time. So not only black people do the job, of course the white were also commanding and doing whatever. But where he's coming from is he's saying is we needed right now to improve ourselves as black people first, instead of trying to look for help again from the white foxes to help us to build our own. For example, I've got a barbershop in Plymouth, which you all know. If I bring it back to my own shop, for example, which is a black barbershop, it's not a black barbershop, but because it's owned by a black guy, it seems to be a black barbershop. We cut all sorts of hair. We cut white people, we cut Indian people, we cut black people, we cut everyone. But if I tell you majority of my customers are black, right? But not because I say it on the shop, it's for black people. We don't get any street people coming in just let me the haircut barbershop is here. They look first and they pass on. So that kind of mentality is he's now saying, but you see now brothers going into other barbershops for haircut. So why not put money back into ourselves and then empower ourselves, make ourselves a bit self-sustained, so that we don't go out now crying to say we need help from the white people, whilst we are on our own. If you look, for example, where he's coming from as well, let's say if you look Lewis Hamilton's team as a team for like secretary, accounting, whatever, you won't be surprised 90% are white. If you go and look back to Jay-Z and Kanye West and all those big boys who are spending money in America, if you look, their second command is black, but third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10 is white. And I understand why they're doing that as well. Because if I have a black barber or a black-owned business like myself, and I have the full of my team are black, okay, I'll go back to my agents. I've got another business I do, healthcare, right? So if I have all my people, my staff are black people, and they're busy calling these old care homes, we supply stuff, old managers in care homes and stuff like that. As soon as accent comes in, there's a perception that this cause is maybe from India, it sells, it's nothing, then I don't get no business. So now strategically, I go now and get a white person to run the same thing I could be running myself. So what he's saying, Anthony Joshua, going back to his statement, is let's empower ourselves. Let's not see these barriers as barriers. Let's empower ourselves. By doing so, it makes us not to go and look for help from the white guys, and then we are on our own people, including himself. If you look in his entourage or his team, apart from his boys, the accountant, the strategist, the socialist, the whatever, if you look at them, they are white, even though he's saying that. But he's doing that from a strategic or business point of view, not because you want to do it. I think that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason it's been brought up quite a lot is because people think he's being very hypocritical when obviously Eddie Hearn's his manager who's white, his coach is white, and his trainer's white. So obviously it does look bad and a bit hypocritical. Nick, we'll come to you if you want.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Keith.
That's all right.
Yeah, I can also understand, I think, what Anthony Joshua is saying. And I think that may surprise some, because I think that for some people, like you say, it may come across as hypocritical. But I see, on the face of it, I sort of see a very, very complex issue in racism. But the way that I try and see it for myself is that with racism, and we'll come around to sport in a little bit with some examples, I think, but with racism, there is clearly an imbalance in the equation between, prejudices seen between, white people and black people. And I see that there's only a certain amount of that pie. And there's clearly, in that equation, clearly it's balanced towards white people at the minute, I think. I think if you look at sort of examples, we'll go into sport in a minute, but first thing I think of is coaching and managing in football. I think that's a prime example. If you were looking to sort of cabinets in politics historically, there are less BAME sort of representation than there is, in terms of the actual demographic of the country. And the way I see it is that for now, there is an imbalance in that equation, and we need to rebalance that equation to ensure the long-term gain is equality. And I think what Anthony Joshua is saying is he wants for black people to ensure that by, only shopping in black shops, for example, they are, as Tendai said, they're propping themselves up. They're ensuring that their side of the equation becomes balanced. So the long-term goal is that we have equality. But for now, we don't have equality. So I think that we and I think what Anthony Joshua is saying is that we need to readdress that balance. And I sort of think that that's where he's going with that. This is coming from a guy who is, I've had no experience of first-hand racial abuse. So, you've got to understand that, I'm clearly a sort of white male. And also that, I'm on a podcast right now. So, anything I say is very unlikely I'm going to come out and say something really sort of incendiary because, it's going to come back badly on me. But I think that is quite key with what Anthony Joshua does here, is I think that he's got to ensure that his message, because he's clearly a very powerful person in sport and society, he's got to, I think, just be careful that what he says does not increase segregation. And what it does is sort of ensures that sort of black people can sort of better themselves and they have those opportunities. But in the end, that what he's saying is not incendiary and it doesn't create segregation by what he's saying. And I think that some people may see what his comments as that. But my sort of interpretation of that is that, I think he's trying to look at readdressing the balance and sort of the end goal is in effect equality.
No, I get it. Like I said, a lot of people have come out and made the exact point you have, Nick, that it might come across as he just wants the black community to do their own thing, just look after themselves, and then that creates more segregation rather than equality. So I think that's quite a good point. Brian, let's hear your views.
Cheers for having me, Keith.
Love and live.
Well, basically, mate, I feel like I think it's this whole situation has been happening from years and years and years ago. And what Anthony Joshua was speaking about, it's not the first time he's spoken about it. And if you really take into notice, the people that are mainly critical of what he's saying are not black people. That people that are trying to, I'm not going to go as far as say, like shut us up, or maybe just silence us. I'm just saying they're not reading into what he's actually trying to say. Because at the end of the day, Black people, we are minorities, right? Especially in the Western part of the world, we are minorities, and opportunities are, it's harder to get opportunities that we require as a minority, as a Black human being, in terms of like high paying jobs or whatever industry you want to go into. So what he's trying to say is like, let's try and build into our own communities and build ourselves. And obviously, yes, we don't want to cause segregation, no. And it's a bit hypocritical to speak on segregation when we've been segregated from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So, but my main point I just want to say is literally, at the end of the day, guys, racism in sports or around the world or anything has never gone away. It's just the reporting of racism has gone away. That's pretty much, that's my thought process. And now through social media, through a tragic event, people are starting to notice it. Even the people that don't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, whether you agree or not, at least it's got your attention.
Mm-hmm.
At least we're talking about it. At least people that didn't have an idea, didn't understand how we feel, how everyone else feels, maybe now they can take into notice, regardless of whether they agree or don't agree. It's still something that is actually being spoken about all around the world.
Well, for instance, I was going to say, without being horrible, I probably wouldn't be doing a racism in sport podcast if that incident hadn't happened. So even people down here in Plymouth, we're like, I've only got like 80 subscribers on YouTube, but we are talking about it just because of that incident.
Exactly, which is it's a tragic thing, but in hindsight, in the bigger picture, this whole thing has actually changed how us as human beings think, and hopefully it will bring us closer and will make us understand, like, we're not saying only Black Lives Matter, we're just saying in this particular moment and this particular situation, let's try and focus on this particular problem, you know. And we're not stupid enough to think not all lives matter, you know. So going back to sports and everything like that, just to conclude my point is, racism at the end of the day is just it's a form of, I think it's just an ignorant form of people that don't know how to articulate themselves. So we should all just come together and just try and fight it as much as we can. It's going to take long, but let's just continue doing it.
Yeah, they've put a few more things in place, but once again, in the last 20 years, how many times we've seen the FA put out a kick it out or whatever they want to call it, kick it out, they rename it, rebrand it, and then they do it and it happens again. So this is one of the things that we need to talk about in a minute. But Ash, will just come into Anthony Joshua. I'll come to you.
Yeah, so most of the guys have covered pretty much a lot of what I would have said. Anthony Joshua is a Black man in a very powerful position, and he's a man that has shown that a Black man can strive in this world, and he's at the top of his business. So is Lewis Hamilton, Raheem Sterling, the guys who have all been very outspoken in what they've said recently. So it's great to see that they're chanting and supporting the cause at the minute. With Anthony Joshua, with what he said, I get pretty much everything that he said. I think, just like Brian said, you've got to really read into what he said, because if you don't, it can be misconstrued. Some of the things, like you said, use of the words of "don't use their businesses." Do you know what I mean? That then becomes a very, we're now
us against them.
We're now, as human beings, white, black, whatever minority you are, people are trying to rally around the Black community, and there's some that aren't. And with a statement like that, you have got to be so careful. And that's not just what he said. That's when Boris Johnson goes out and puts out whatever he says. Everybody's looking at trying to misconstrue or trip up what you say, and try and twist the narrative to suit someone else's cause. So I'd just say it was a bit, put more money into our businesses and in our own businesses and not these businesses. I was a bit like, but that's the definition of what you're trying to strive away from. But I understand from what Tendai said is that he's saying that black people need to support more black business and things like that. So, but I'd almost certainly like to see more white people support black businesses, more white people support Indian businesses, or white businesses supporting white business. Do you know what I mean? It's, for me, I said on Facebook the other day, I went on a mad rant, that I was quite lucky to grow up in the Northwest. It's such a multi-diverse place to live, and I've been blessed to some of my friends of all different ethnic backgrounds, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing because I can imprint that onto my children and their children, which is only going to help reduce systemic racism in the future. It's just more people have got to do that, and this movement as it stands right now is, I mean, people are taking notice, and my worry is, how long will it be? I hope it doesn't default back. I hope, do you know what I mean, touching wood, that this is a turning point where people go, do you know what? Let's push this forward. Let's not just be a thing for a month and then it disappear, and then another black man dies somewhere, or another African American or another Indian or whatever person dies at the hands of someone else, and then it kicks back up, and then it's like, well, we're not really achieving anything. We're not breaking the cycle if we're not keeping on top of it, and we're not educating other people. And from a white man's perspective, the black community very much have to look at making things better within their own community. But it's then down to people like me, Nick, yourself, that when we see this racism happen, to go, well, wait a minute, and stand up for that and show there's a solidarity. Because if we don't, what is it all about? It's still a segregation, and this is what we need to get away from. It's just like being white and never having really suffered oppression. It's mad to me that this is still a thing, and that's quite ignorant in a way, and I don't mean it to come across as ignorant, is that I've never suffered it, but it's just insane that people have had to suffer because of ignorance and stupidity. And I just, do you know what I mean? I want it to be better. I want a world for my children to grow up in where things are better. And they look at us and go, what the fuck were you lot doing? And they'd be better, and they strive to be better for the next generation. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be progressive.
But on that point, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the systemic thing. Like, not mine personally, but a lot of grandparents are racist or don't have the same attitudes as us younger people. So I think racism is not going to disappear in the next 10, 15 years, no chance. But in 100 years, maybe after a couple of generations have passed down the knowledge of don't do this, that it's not right, then maybe you might end up getting rid. Well, you'll probably never ever get rid of racism, unfortunately.
Yeah, but in that respect, mate, racism didn't come around when our grandparents were around. It's been around thousands of years.
No, but it's been brought up more, and people are more aware that it's not right. Not that they should have been not aware.
My grandparents, when they see my mate on TV who plays football, they'll go, "Oh, your coloured mate was on TV," and I'm like, "He's black. He's calling black," and they're not they're not trying to be racist. That's just the language that they were brought up and understand. And again, it's down to me to go, you can call him black, and they're like, well, that's racist. I'm like, it's not racist. He's a black man. I said, even better, just say your mate was on TV the other day. I seen him play, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna know who you're talking about. Doesn't matter what his colour is the point that I try to get across.
Yeah, go on, Brian. You were trying to say something.
I was just trying to interject, but I think Ryan kind of like backtracked and said in terms of like calling. Why should we identify each other within by color? Why should it be like this, that black player, that white player? Do you know what I mean? So, that's where those little tiny what's the word? Those tiny details that in terms of like racism, like people are not racist in your face, like, oh, you N-word, la la la. They'll just, say, hey man, you speak well for a black guy. Certain things like that. Those little connotations are they come from a racist barrier in a way. Do you know what I mean?
The thing to ensure with that as well is that obviously, like you say, you don't want to, just sort of define someone for, the color of someone's skin. But I think what is important to remember is that, we are all different, and that, there may be some specific things and specific cultures and specific skill sets that, that need to be appreciated as well. And I think that sort of trying to sort of come back to sport as well recently, as sort of on the sport podcast. I think that sort of going back to Anthony Joshua, my normal opinion on sportsmen is that, and sport in general, is that it's unfair to sort of view sports and sports people as as on pedestals or anything like that. Sport for me is a cross section of society. It has the best of things, but it also has the worst of things. But at the same time, I've really sort of enjoyed how and appreciate how sort of Anthony Joshua, Raheem Sterling, Paul Ince, Lewis Hamilton are all using the sort of their voice, because they know that even though I don't think that they should be seen as heroes, they are seen as heroes. They have a voice, and it's been really refreshing to see the amount of people that have come out and sort of said that speak for what they believe in and use that pedestal to sort of speak out on what they believe in, because there's going to be fans of sort of Anthony Joshua and Lewis Hamilton and Raheem Sterling who sort of recoil at what they say or maybe disagree with what they say, and they may lose fans because of that. But I think it's been really refreshing to actually see them come out and use their position, and maybe in the sort of coming days and weeks we may see some white players or white sports people come out and say sort of similar things and use their positions to sort of voice this. And I think sport is important because, like I say, sport is a cross section of society, but it means so much to everyone that it clearly gets attention, doesn't it?
Yeah, like you said, yes, you're right. They shouldn't be put on pedestals. But if Thierry Henry, for being an Arsenal fan, Thierry Henry is a hero, whether he should be or not be. If Thierry Henry comes out and says, "Don't call black people this word," I will not call a black person that word because Thierry Henry has told me to do it. It sounds silly, but it's one of those things. Trying to keep it on sport, and since we've got an ex-Belgrade manager here, well, two, talking about Raheem Sterling's comments about not having many BAME players or managers in sports. Tendai, how do you think we can help that in grassroots and professional? Well, obviously you weren't a good manager, so that's not our fault. I mean normally.
Yeah. See, that's racism right there. It's difficult. Let's go to Sky Sports.
Can I drink, by the way? Am I allowed? Sorry, Jedi.
That's okay. Let's go to Sky Sports, which we all watch every day. Like Sky Sports. Right now, we're waiting for you to watch it. You hear the likes of Gary Neville. What's the other one?
Jamie Carragher,
and the older guy. What's his name?
Graham Souness.
They're the ones that discuss racism on Sky Sports.
I can only think of Ian Wright, who is a regular black former player who's on TV that much.
He's on Sky Sports.
No, but I mean, he's on BBC. Like ITV don't have any, really, do they? They have Lee Dixon normally.
Yeah, BBC is nothing. I'm talking about Sky Sports. I'm trying to come down with you so you understand where I'm coming from. So you've got these people now when it happened again, when some chanting happens in the stadiums and things like that, then we realize, oh, racism is still happening. Oh, let's talk about it. And then you hear Gary Neville and Graham Souness talking about it. And then you just wonder, where exactly is this guy's experienced racism? What knowledge do they have? You can't read racism and then come up and become an expert in racism and say, you have to be affected. And we are affected differently as minority. Your experience, Brian's experience, and my experience could not be the same. So there's no way I could give Brian's experience that's the way of racism. So you need to start from there to begin with. Don't worry what about coaches and sports down here. The Sky Sports themselves need to look at themselves before they start to solve racism on the national TV. Where it's got watched right now, even my brothers, they watch Sky Sports because they just changed the name of the channel, but it's still Graham Souness and Gary Neville on the screen. So these are the guys, Sky Sports themselves need to address their living room to begin with. Right. Now, we come out of the media because the media controls. Without media ourselves, we are nothing. Right now, we are using this media. What we're doing right now is media. We're talking about it on a media platform. We're having to do this now because they're not doing it. And I appreciate you bringing us here, to balance these discussions. So we know where we're coming from, or we also understand where you guys coming from, what your understandings are in terms of the situation and how you guys grow up as well, things like that. So it makes sense. So my first protocol point was to fix Sky Sports living room and have someone in there, which they have plenty of players. The plenty of players have passed through Premier League. Some of them were heroes, the Didier Drobbas, the Samuel Eto'os. There's plenty out there. Antico, Drightco, you name them. But if Gary Neville only finished football yesterday in Karaga, they are now championing Sky Sports. For what reason? What happened to the guys who played there before? Where are they gone? Where is Eto'o? Where is Didier Drogba? Like Didier Drogba right now, if he comes back on Sky, I'm sure everyone would like to watch Didier Drogba, for example. Yeah, anyone Ray, for example. I know you came a little bit and you had to try football coaching, for example. Ian Wright, all those guys. But that's the top. That's the top end. The bottom end reflects from that. If we don't see a video of George being murdered on a media platform, we won't be talking about this today, would we? No. So what I'm saying is, so you need to start discussion of that. It needs to be reflected in the top of sports, which I think Sky Sports hold the terms right now everywhere you go. I know now when it goes to Arabic session, TV, it's called now Richard Key and
Andy Gray.
Andy Gray, they are now there now. But look at this. These guys came from Sky Sports and go and took over another channel, which, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my point, if we fix that first, that top bit, and we start to see more of that on the Sky Sports reflection, because my child, your child, I know he doesn't go one, it take you years to get one. I'm talking of Ryan, for example. If they like football and they watch this, they get it on TV every Saturday, on Super Sunday, yeah? They're about to, when they go to training ground for pitch tomorrow, they won't be surprised to see a black guy on the pitch. But they watch football, they're dead every day. When your halftime comes in, there's 3 or 4 white guys talking week in, week in. Every time they're watching, it's not diversity at all. It's Sky Sports. So they fixed that up. Now it goes back to football clubs and the rest. It feeds down from Sky Sports, from the media. If media don't talk about something, we don't change. Right now we are going about this Black Lives Matter, was also the media picked it up and it's flowing down to us or the bottom. If you see what I mean. So to fix what you're just telling me, in sports mainly, Sky Sports need to fix their home first. When that happens, when your child grow up watching Tendai on Sky every week, every Saturday, discussing certain issues, certain matters.
Tendai trying to get a job at Sky from my podcast.
You're watching, I'm here, guys.
Tendai's basically just slagged off Sky Sports policy and then he's looking for a job.
Yeah, I don't use my own example. But then if your child grow up watching that, for example, like before they're watching Andy Gray and Richard Key, like we just said, and then Gary Neville and thing took over. So there's no change there. It's two white guys championing the Sky Sports, the sports we all love to watch every Saturday and Sunday. You see what I mean?
No, I get that. What I would say, go on.
Sorry. I agree with you on what you're saying at the top. But I think it also has to come from the bottom of grassroots too.
I was going there.
Because how many English cricket captains do we see who are black? How many English rugby fly halves do we see who are black, or scrum halves do we see who are black? How many referees do we see who are black? How I want to see more of those positions. When you're a youth footballer, if you see if a youth coach for me has to do a little bit more, and that has to come from the top, of course. But if you're a youth footballer or even a grassroots player, and you see that the other team has a black player,
winger, quick,
a winger or a striker or somewhere athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, I think that why hasn't that black young player been given an opportunity to be a central midfielder, or a position where maybe they don't use their athletic ability so much, they use their brain a little bit more? Like fly half and scrum half for me in rugby is a prime example. Cricket captain for England again. You don't see those positions, but in the England rugby team, you will see plenty of flankers. Sorry, Brian. You see plenty of wingers. For me, I think you need, at the bottom as well, the bottom rung, you need to see more opportunities for those black individuals being given in those sorts of positions. And then that eventually filters up. Because if you have a black English captain, he is more likely to be a pundit on Sky Sports because he's been the captain. If you have, a star central midfielder, for me, I think that will filter up eventually. I think those opportunities need to be given at, not just at the top, as I agree with you, Tendai, they do need to be given at the top to filter down. But I think that they also need to be given to at the bottom, because I would like to say that we will see a BAME fly half, scrum half, English cricket captain, but I'm not sure that we will in the next few years, unfortunately.
Talking about grassroots, Tendai, and obviously you have a lot to do with Plymouth Hope. Can I just say that I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but most of the teams in Belgrave's league are all white, and then you have Plymouth Hope, without being disrespectful, is a very black team. They are black players. You don't have any. I'm not saying you don't have any. I don't know your team that well, but normally it's full of black players. So surely then players should be given chances in other teams. But because they stick to their own team, that doesn't help them at the same time, does it? They need to venture out, but they might not feel welcome, which is the issue.
No, we have, for example, the likes of Tornado now plays for Waterbridge.
Tower Bridge.
No. After Bristol, just after.
Oh,
Bristol.
really?
You come down from it's after Bristol. Then there's Supermay. Then there's this town after that. So he goes up. That's his main team. He plays for them. And Bridgewater. That's the one. He also plays for Bodmin when he's not up. They haven't got a game up there. He plays for Bodmin locally. So we've got Fine Boy, for Tornado, we've got Jack. They all play for these other Cornish teams, for example. But I want to go back to my point earlier. I don't think you guys understand what I was trying to say. For us to fix the problem of racism, we have to start educating. And educating starts from younger ones. It's difficult now for you and me. It's like for you and me right now, especially you, teach you football because you failed already.
Oh, right. Thanks for coming on, Tendai. It's been nice to speak to you again.
That was only because you're my coach.
Here, what I'm trying to put across here. If we teach our youngsters what they see, it becomes natural. Right now, like I said, if football, for example, football is a very, very, very well sport. Football, mainly. Rugby, you select. Cricket, you only hear them when they win World Cup. That's it. But besides that, football is the key. So if football starts to on top, where we watch, right now my boy is 5. Yeah, you watch Man U with me. You watch Sky Sports with me. You watch Match of the Day. Things like that. So in his learning process, right, he's learning to see the black boy is playing for Man U. He's seeing the manager as white. He knows it, and he's growing up. So that's what I'm trying to get at. So if the vision where we all go to watch is Sky Sports on a Saturday, because we all go to Agao except me. I never see you guys at Agao watching your local team. But if we fix that vision where our kids grow up seeing, then for them it becomes normal to begin with to have a black guy in their team, and it's not like only have to play wing. It's normal because Sky Sports there's Tendai there, or there's wherever Sky Sports, so it's okay every weekend we are saying it's normal to them. Right.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Tender. I'm not disagreeing with you. I am agreeing that it happens at the top, but then it will happen at the bottom. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So now when they grow up, because for you and me, like you just said, racism will going to stay on for the next 15, 20 years. We've agreed that it's going to be difficult to eradicate. So who is right now 15 years younger than me? Or my boy, for example. Yeah, he's 10 years younger than me.
You are not 20.
Whatever, right, for example. So it's these people that we need to educate or targeting, because we can't target your grandmother or your father or things like that, because the sheep is sold. But the youngsters, as they're growing up, they need to learn or understand the diversity of the city. I was saying this in my speech earlier on in Plymouth when we had the Black Lives Matter. Plymouth is being painted. My daughter can marry a white guy. Then my house is now becoming a mixed house. I have to adjust now to understand the white guy and how does he deal with. And for my own cultures that I know, I believe in strongly, and the boys' culture is believing strongly. Then we can have to now meet halfway. So this is happening right now in our society. So, but it didn't happen as much. Like when I came here to Plymouth, it was 2005. I will hardly see black people. I'll have to literally you find one and smile and shake it.
Yeah.
Joyful.
So what's up, bro? It's not.
You know what I mean? But now it's like you turn left. Oh, now you turn everywhere is there. We even ourselves as well. We've got businesses now in Plymouth, so we have grown. So there's a growth there, if you like. So what I'm saying is, for us to change the football aspect, where you just say when a black guy arrives, even my boy, I had my little boy. I took him for margins for 5-a-side. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said grassroots. I've gone back. 4 years. It was 4. It's 5 now. He went there. My boy is tall, like me, of course. He's a bit tall, so but for his age, so he's like, he's very strong. He's very fast. They didn't realize what they were saying, but in my mind already, that's stereotyping. How they know my boy?
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Already the stereotyping of my boy now. Like, okay, maybe we should play him wing now, or we should play him on number 9. We should play him up front. Maybe my boy wants to be a goalkeeper. Maybe he wants to be number left back, right back. You know what I'm saying? So now he's now already channeled into some sort of a winger or a number 9 in a grassroots. So if we change the mentality of the younger ones, we can eradicate racism. But like you said, you won't be here you won't be in the next 20 years.
No, I'd like to make a couple of points on that. First, you're saying about this, changing it from the top way down. Obviously, I agree with you. But I also got to think, you've got to look at the progress that has been made in the last 20 years. Look at the English national team for football. You used to have one black player if you're lucky. Now, look at it. Raheem Sterling, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho.
They have no choice. Listen, the pressure is coming. It's not like they're doing it because they want to.
But you're better.
No, they are best players. And you look at these youngsters, they're only 21 and below. So it's not like they're doing it because they're trying to balance the books or whatever. They actually have no choice. Right?
No, I'm just saying that maybe 20 years ago they might not have got played even if they were better because they were black. Yeah, I'd like to come to Brian next because Brian's not had a word for a while. Then we'll go Ashel. But I'd also like to say quickly, I forgot what I wanted to say. So word with Brian. Go on then, Brian.
I think we're just focusing on football here because, I'm a big cricket fan, right? Test match cricket, right? There's literally.
So is Nick.
There's one every 10 years or so, there's only one cricket player that's black, and then there's one Asian player that happens to be a spinner. Do you know what I mean? And then the rest, of the 9
middle class white people.
That's white people. So let's not just focus on football and say, it's becoming better now because an English national team is being pressured to have maybe it's an equality quota. They're trying to let's see we've got black people that do they really value them as within their talents, or do they just want to tick the boxes? Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves first and foremost. But going back to cricket again, that's a big situation because not a lot of minorities are given an opportunity to play cricket because most of the cricket players come from middle class private schools, and then financially they can't afford to get into those colleges and performance institutions where they can develop that cricket abilities. So they've gone to the point whereby they have to have discussions about it. But I've not seen I've not seen 3 or 4 black players in a cricket team in England. But then if you go back to, like, say, South Africa, they've come up with this thing called the quota system.
Mm-hmm.
So whereby, because obviously, as you know, back in the apartheid days, only white players were just playing cricket in South Africa and rugby. So now they have to have maybe four black people, four white people, and 4 because there's a lot of Indian South Africans as well. So they've created that system. But then again, if the team doesn't perform, then they say, oh, these people were just put on the team because of that skin color, not based on talent.
Yeah, that was very evident in the last series, wasn't it? And the conversations with Timber Bavuma, especially I think when Rabada got banned, and Giddy was injured as well. I think if they didn't bring Bavuma back, then there wouldn't have been. I'm not sure. I'd have to check, but I'm not sure there would have been any sort of black or minority ethnic players in the South Africa team. So that was around the conversation around Bavuma, wasn't it? Whether he was scoring enough runs or whether he was just in because of the quota. So,
well, for me, for instance, for cricket, I like cricket. I'm not a massive fan. I couldn't name you every player, but I could probably name you 50 white players, but I could only name you English players, Carberry and Ramprakash are probably the only 2 black players.
Ramprakash is Indian. It was Asian native.
I think we have to be really careful to not. I think you have to remember that sports are different. Racism in sport is obviously a general topic, but sports are very different in between. If you sort of compare football, and I'm going to use rugby and cricket because we've spoken about them just now. Football, sort of now and historically, is a very working class sport, and rugby and cricket is historically been a very middle class sport. And if you sort of look. Just historically, and this is sort of there are correlations, but the education rate of sort of private schools is generally better across the years, and the education against working class schools is generally slightly worse. That's a bit of a generalization, but there is plenty of evidence to back that up. I think if you look at the demographic, if you look at football and you compare to rugby. There is so much more tribalism in football, and when you compare that with rugby, you will very sort of rarely get football fans sitting together, and not sort of spouting abuse at each other. Whereas in rugby, it's very civilized. You have that rivalry, but it's not sort of the tribal horrible instincts that you see in football. And I think that's similar with cricket. You'll sit with opposition team fans with cricket. So I think we just have to sort of remember that it's racism in sport is obviously a big issue, but I think that in football you have to look a little bit deeper at the history. And I think there's more things with football as well. I think if you look at the sort of football players are more in the media in general than cricketers and rugby players because of the finances involved. There's more pressure. That there's so because of that money and because of the mainstream media. We spoke about players being heroes before, but there is that so much more sort of footballers are under the microscope so much more, and any sort of mistake or any issue is looked at so much more. And I think that's another one of the reasons why we see worse. I think we see more blatant acts of racism in football than we do with the sort of other sports. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I think you see more blatant acts in football.
But one thing I can commend the pundits, the media, in terms of on the cricket side of Sky Sports, going back to Tendai's point in terms of Sky Sports and the hierarchy and stuff. The pundits, the cricket pundits in the Sky Sports are actually multiracial. Sorry, not multiracial, but there's a West Indian guy.
Nasa Sangakkara, yeah, definitely.
So and I like that because yes, because there's T20, so there's Sky Sports shows leagues from India, the IPL. So it's better in that way. But then again, when you go down and trickle down into the actual sport itself, I think there's a lot of improvements that can be
I'd say
made.
the same in rugby as well. If you look at rugby pundits, you have Ugo Monye, who's a really massive up-and-coming pundit on PBT.
Yeah.
Jeremy Guscott's been on the BBC for years and years. I mean, he definitely suffered racial issues at the start of his career. But, you know, when you sort of compare that with what Tendai's talking about in terms of the sort of Sky Sports demographic, I think it probably is a little bit more diverse in those sports for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give Ashel a quick talk, and then I'd like to go around and have a quick roundup. And I'd like to see if you have any ideas how to maybe combat it, maybe further in sport, and we might touch on it like a bit more outside of sport as well. Just your ideas and maybe how we can deal with that. So Ashel, comments on the last bit of chat.
There's a lot, and there's a lot I agree with, and there's quite a bit that I disagree with. So it'll probably take me to be the arsehole of the podcast.
This is why you're on.
So my issue with some of the things that I said, it was nice that Brian have actually pointed to the fact that cricket was a bit more multiracial with Sky. Now, I'm not saying that I've got all the answers and I know that this is a fact and this isn't a fact. But I've always seen, and like I said, it's because probably I've been blessed of growing up where I grew up, is that I've always seen the best person does the best job. If you're the best at that situation, or the best at that position, or you're the best for that job, you go and do that job.
Canada is not.
Can I just quickly counter that? Sorry. So the only thing I would say with cricket and rugby is, as I said before, it's predominantly private school sort of participants, especially at the national level. If you look at the rugby team, it's over half. If you look at the cricket team, it's over half. With his football, it's not. And I think because of I think black and minority ethnic people getting less opportunities to go to that private school to sort of hone their skills, to develop their skills, they have less of an opportunity to end up being in the national team.
No, agreed. But what I think Ash was trying to say, and he's trying not to come across as a douche, is that because they haven't got them skills, whether it's their fault or not, which obviously is not their fault, they might not be the best for the job because there are others who can do it.
Give them a chance.
So here we go. This is where I'm going at, right?
Yeah.
Is that primarily, if we look back over the last 30, 40 years of football, let's use football as a quick example, and then I'll move on, is that there was primarily a lot more white players than any other background. So the likelihood is that there was going to be more punditry roles now for white people. Now, I believe that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that you will see the likes, because there's so many more black players and multi-diverse cultures in the football leagues now. We're going to see in the next 10, 15, 20 years, a lot more black players, a lot more black managers, a lot more black pundits. So that's where I'm going with it, is I think that when I'm saying the best man for the best job, I'm not saying that there isn't a black person that is good at that job. There may be things probably are getting slipped under that. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I'm saying that there's like we talk about Didier Drogba. Didier Drogba doesn't even live in this country. So the likelihood of him coming doing Sky Sports, for example, do you know what I mean? Is if you could sit there and rattle off 10 black footballers now who are punditries in this country, I'd probably go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm right. But I'm struggling to think.
Ian Wright, like I said, is the only one that really stands out. Chris Kamara. Apart from that,
Evra, there's Heskey's there. Rio is there. Rio is now with the BT. BT is done all right. Rio is there. Heskey's about. They call him when they want to call him for certain time or certain story. Fit him in where he suits.
Okay.
Let's move away from pundits and let's look at them managers. So for me,
that was going to be my last bit. I was going to go round. Okay, well, thanks, Nick. You're in charge, Nick.
I'm going to kick it off now. So right now there are 91 Football League teams, and unfortunately there's not 92 because Bury have gone under. That's probably a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Anywho, okay, there are 5 British and minority ethnic managers. So you're looking at 6-7% of the pool of managers in the Football League are black and minority ethnic. Now, in 2017-2018, there were, I've got it in front of me here, 33% of the Premier League players were black and minority ethnic, okay? So, to me, that, first of all, that doesn't make sense. How can there be 33% black and minority ethnic players, but there's only 6 or 7% managers. Okay, so you maybe say to me, okay, well maybe there's a bit of a time lag. Okay, well let's go back to 2005-06. 27% of black and minority ethnic players in the Premier League. Still only 6-7% of managers. 92-93, still 16.5% black and minority ethnic players. Still only 6% now. And I think that the sort of one who's quite outspoken with it, really, and I sort of think of it. I've got 5 players who I'm going to throw at you and compare with you. So Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, Ryan Giggs, Ashley Cole, Sol Campbell. Okay, these were all part of the England's golden generation of footballers, so we called. Okay, that's again probably another podcast, creating podcasts for you all over here, Keaton. All right, now all of those 5 players have done their UEFA, I believe it's UEFA B license. Okay, Ryan Giggs has managed Manchester United. Frank Lampard's managing Chelsea. Steven Gerrard is managing Rangers, and touted to be the next Liverpool manager. Yeah. Ashley Cole,
Derby.
was working at Derby. I think he's at Chelsea now, but he's not a manager. Sol Campbell is managing Southend. I think he managed at Macclesfield, and he did brilliant jobs at both. He kept Macclesfield up, bearing in mind they had 0 money. And now he's got Southend far more points than anyone thought they would. They were relegated. So what is the difference between those 5 managers, from that golden generation to now? Now you could say, maybe Ashley Cole was, disgraced in the media for his marriage with Cheryl Cole. Okay, fine. Well, maybe there's a media implication on that. Okay. Sol Campbell. Now, Sol Campbell, how is he any different to the other players? He's very outspoken, but one of those examples there was Ryan Giggs. Now, Ryan Giggs did very interesting things with his brother's wife. Yeah, he's gone on to manage, Manchester United. It's not thought about. Whereas Ashley Cole, I think, lives in the shadow of his sort of very public marriage with Cheryl Tweedy. Nick, the famous advert they did with the crossed fingers.
Sorry, Nick. Can I just catch you on the beginning of the topic?
Yeah. Go to Tendai, because obviously my point that I was trying to carry on and raise the points off the back of
sorry.
was completely irrelevant. So
I'm coming to Nick's. We started the conversation by talking about Andy Joshua's comment. How many black people owns any team in England?
There's probably a few more than you realise, but I don't have the stats in front of me. I can think of a few off the top of my head. I know that
Charlton. I was going to say Charlton.
Are managed by. They're going through massive financial issues in there. Macclesfield are managed by a minority ethnic guy. I think Farah. I think he's called Faraz at Nottingham Forest. Obviously you've got Manchester City's owners, so I think there's probably slightly more owners than there are.
Let's not mix black and Asian here.
I'm just saying black and minority ethnic, Tender. I'm not saying black.
No, I'm talking about black, because right now the topic is to do with black people. So right now as we're speaking, we're gonna have a podcast in a couple of years' time when the Asians are complaining for something else. Right now, we stick to black people, because this movement is called Black Lives Matters, and we're talking specifically for black people. If we start to inclusive now, we are losing it. I know racism happened to Indians as well. I know that. I'm not taking away. We are now going back to all life matters. Right now, we're talking about black people. That's why I say, how many black people owns a football club in the league?
But Tendai, so anybody can buy a football club from any background. So what I don't understand what you're getting at is, it's got nothing. Are you saying that because people are black, they're not offered the same opportunity to buy a club with the same amount of money?
Or what I think Tande is trying to say is, because they're not owned by black people, they're not hiring black managers.
I'm going back to the topic we started with Joshua's point.
Yeah, talking about supporting your own.
That's what we're saying. So we are saying, why are not black Ashley Cole and Sol Campbell not getting jobs in the hierarchies of football clubs, for example? Are they being interviewed by black people? No. They're being interviewed by a bunch of white people, 10 in a room. You're only black guy in there. So that's what I'm getting at. Let's not sugarcoat it a little bit.
I agree with what you're saying, Tendai.
Yeah.
I think also what I'd say is as well is that when you have a black manager, the owner, however much you sort of will possibly dispute it, the owner will have pressure from the fans if a black manager is not performing.
But
I think for me, a black manager will be afforded slightly less time to succeed than a white manager will be succeed. And I think the reason for that will be because of the prejudices that lie within the fan base, because they will put more pressure onto the club and onto the owner to sack that black manager because of their sort of their prejudices and what they think, their thoughts on that black manager, because they'll deem before that he's even had the chance to do the job that he's not good enough for that job. So I think it's not just like you say with the owners. I think it's also comes from the fans, because at the end of the day, if the fans are putting pressure on an owner to sack a manager, that owner's going to be thinking, well, I could lose money here because the fans might stop coming, they may stop spending money, but also they've got to that's where it's going to really affect them, isn't it? If they're going to lose money and the club is going to sort of go downhill because of their decisions in the ballroom. So ultimately, it's the easy out for them to not employ the black manager.
100%. What I'd like to say before we go, because I don't know how long we've been going on, but I'm trying to keep my podcast to 40 minutes. I think we'd be going to an hour. I was going to say, we'll go around and I'd like to hear what you'd like to think could change and how we could change it. So you can take football, take rugby, take cricket, but in sport, how do you think maybe we can try and stamp out? Because obviously, like I said, we've had plenty of kick-out campaigns. You've had plenty of stuff. What do you think could actually work? So I'll go with Ashel first.
I just think that we've got to continue the work that's happening now. I think that as it's so profound right now that you don't let the movement die. It's as soon as that happens, it was, I remember in 2020 in May and June when this happened, or do you know what I mean? It's just another footnote in history. If it's not going to make a dent, then what you've got to sit there and say, what are we doing it for? So I think people have got to, I think off the back of when we come back to sport from the virus properly, that we've got to keep, from the Black Lives Matter movement, we've got to keep that and put that pressure on in sport, and then start putting that pressure on in, hopefully someone's brave enough to give more managers, more coaches the opportunities. But I still believe that, I hope that falls in line with the best man for the best job. Sol Campbell being that example. If he's the best man for the job, he gets the job, and that's how it should be, and that's how I want it to go. So we've got to be these owners and the FA have got to be brave to say, do you know what, we are about equality and diversity, and he should get the job. Do you know what I mean? A black England manager would be the pinnacle, wouldn't it? That would be making headlines, the noise. That would be a statement of intent for sports, or for football at least. So yeah, I think it's hard to say exactly what I think would make things change. We've got to make sure that we are keeping on top of racism in football grounds and lifetime bans. I don't believe this because it happened at a football ground and they banned them, that's acceptable. Legal action has to follow. It's a criminal act. It needs to be backed up with a criminal act, and it needs to be given the due care that it deserves. And just hope it goes the right way, step by step. And as shit as it sounds, saying baby steps for how long it's gone on in history, I can't see it happening overnight. But I'd like to wake up tomorrow and the world change.
No, so I totally agree with you. And I know Tandai was chomping at the bit to jump in, but before he does, I want to go to Brian and Nick. But also, I think what Brian's trying to say as well, it's, if I'm wrong, Ash will tell me to shut up. You probably will. But you also, when you say you want the best man for the best job, you don't want Sol Campbell to get a job just because he's black. You want him to get it because no reverse racism, if that makes sense. Oh, we'll give Sol Campbell a job. He's black.
Yeah, no, I don't want him to become a poster boy.
Yeah.
And the pressure being put on him to be a poster boy. I want him to be. I don't want him to be a black manager. I want him to be a manager of a club because he's the best manager, and that's from my perspective. That's not a black perspective, and obviously people may see it differently. And I'm not trying to be insensitive, but my way of supporting the issue is that and we use Sol Campbell, is I want him to get the job and prove people that he's the best manager because he's the best manager.
Not because he's black. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly, I agree. So, Brian, we'll come to you.
I'm going to touch on cricket. I think, I feel maybe there's changes that we can implement. We'll start by, in high schools, in primary schools, giving scholarships to young kids that can't afford to get into these prestigious colleges that have a good cricketing system. So good scholarships, opportunities like that, and just like make it a little bit. Well, I can't go into finance at all because I don't know how much it is per term tuition fees wise in terms of how people can get into those colleges or whatsoever. But that, I think, and just implementing people that come from working class kids that can get into cricket and just do what they're passionate about. And then, well, with football, then I'm just saying we just need to keep talking about it, make it very uncomfortable to hear. So we don't run away from the topic, and we should all talk about it, regardless whether you agree or you do not agree. Have an opinion. Everyone needs to have an opinion. So as long as we all can actually have a conversation about. And in conclusion, thanks again, Keaton, for having me, and thank you for doing this. And hopefully, it's going to get a lot of traffic, and then our voices are going to be heard.
Well, hopefully we might have to do another one. There's bloody hours we could talk about. I'm trying to cut it short here, and you keep going on. But like I said, we can always do another one, maybe on a specific sport, maybe specifically black in cricket, black in football, black in rugby at one point. But on your point, Brian, I'd just like to say cricket again with football, it's going to take time. You can get the people the scholarships, but maybe they won't be good enough. Like Ashel said with the manager situation, they've got to be good enough. I'm not saying they're not, but they've got to be good enough to warrant the spot. They can't just be given, oh, you've got to have a black player because that's the way. They've got to be good enough.
Yeah, I agree.
So Nick, we'll come to you. You can talk about whatever sport you want, pull out whatever statistics you want.
I'm going to cover the three that we've mainly talked about: football, rugby, and cricket. I think that I really love the scholarships idea that Brian has mentioned. I think for me, and I'm going to bring this back to what I said at the start, at the minute the equation is imbalanced. And I think when you try and balance an equation, you add more of something to one side. And for me, that means adding more opportunities for black youths, more scholarships. And I understand what you're saying about they've got to be the right person for the job and they've got to be that. But I think that if you speak to most cricketers and most rugby players, especially when they get the chance to go to a private school, they really hone their skills when they go to that private school and get the opportunity to develop into a better player. Mm-hmm. So I really love the idea of scholarships, regardless of whether they are the best. I want to see more opportunities for black and minority ethnic,
But Nick, for the scholarships, I'm assuming that money would have to come from the government. And as you mentioned, the government is a predominantly white government.
Yeah. I'm coming to that.
They're private-owned schools, though. They're private schools, right? Does the government fund private schools?
Yeah, they could do. But I would like to see it come from sort of central areas like the ECB or the RFU, and the clubs themselves. But yeah, I mean, I would like it to be an all-round effort to show that society as a whole are contributing to that. I think on football, I think that we're further away from where we need to be at the minute. Where football is still a place, especially at the top level, where we don't have an openly gay footballer. Rugby, we have rugby, cricket, we have multiple openly gay rugby and cricketers. I know it's not racism, but it's xenophobia. gay players clearly feel like they can't come out yet. So I think that we are still behind for football. What I would also like to see, and especially for football, I think sport can just be such a thing for good. And I think that what I would like to see is more youth-based activities revolving around sport, whether that be youth clubs or academies based on young black players, to give them the opportunities to go on and develop. Because I don't think that just has positive impacts for sport. I think that also has positive impacts on society, because, you know, there is a lot of, you know, knife crime and gun crime, and that's not just, you know, related to black, you know, black people and minorities. But I think you want to look at aiming that at all sort of impoverished areas and using that as a metric to try and improve people. And I think that if that can be a thing as well, like we've sort of mentioned on the scholarships, then, you know, perhaps we can have sort of football and clubs and the governance contributing to that as a whole society. We can use sport as a thing for good to maybe sort of reduce crime, you know, improve opportunities for people. So that's my sort of 2 cents on change. I would like to see more. I'd like to see more just on opportunities. I think that, you know, there, like I said, the equation is imbalanced at the minute, and I think it needs more on one side to ensure that it's balanced. So yeah, I mean, I think we could go on for this for a long time. But
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think some really good points have been made, and yeah, cheers everyone, and cheers Keaton for having me on.
That's right. Like you said, we could go on forever, and I'm sure Tendai is about to go on forever. But we'll give him his. I'll put a timer on my phone, Tendai, and as soon as 5 minutes comes up, I'm pressing end call. So give it your best.
5 more minutes.
Actually, remember my team talk. My team talk used to go.
We had to get there 2 hours before a game.
I don't remember your team talks because I was fucking asleep for most of them, mate.
Listen, I'm gonna take this a bit a different direction, so that people can take something out of the conversation we're having. We're having a conversation here right now because of the Black Lives Matter movement. But besides that, it's more than that. There's a white supremacy. For some reason, myself growing up, my dad growing up, my grandmama growing up, whatever. For example, I'll take you back to my home country. I'm from Zimbabwe. From Zimbabwe, from my point of view, is white supremacy I'm talking about, going back to sport itself. The rugby, the cricket in Zimbabwe, right now Zimbabwe plays against England and Sri Lanka, whatever. They're also on a cricket league. You see them on Sky Sports. Look inside them, at least maybe, I don't know how many players play cricket match. I don't know. How many? 9, 10? What do you say the number is again? I can't remember. 11 as well, yeah? So if it was 11, maybe 10 are white. This is in Zimbabwe we're talking about. But it goes back, no, we might want to think what happens here in England only. It's also happening in Zimbabwe. You see white, right now it's more mixed because the blacks can now afford, going back to Brian's point, there's now rich black people. They can send out their kids to this kind of A school club, where A school, which charges more than an average you and me type. So the main problem with that is white supremacy, the thought in people's mind that white is better than any other race. That is something that I want us to change, but we cannot change, like I said, on our level. We can only change it through our kids, because my granddad failed to change it when he was growing up, and my dad, and now it's now me. I've not changed, I've lived it. But now we need to educate, when still in sport, our younger generation in sport to know that there is no better race. We are all equal. We get all opportunities, because we can talk about opportunities. They are there, but they are given to white supremacy. Opportunities are there. Don't tell me the opportunities, they are there, but they're given to white people in mind that white people are better than black people. That's the problem. That's really the problem. Despite your qualifications, despite how much, even when Obama got president in America, that was really a shock to the world, wasn't it? Why is it a shock? The guy is smart. He gets there by convincing. But
that's what Asher was saying. He was the best man for the job, and he got the job.
got a job. Yes. So if we say there's no opportunities, we want them to be given opportunities by who? That's the main problem we need to ask ourselves. So we need to understand the white supremacy does exist and is still existing, but that's what we are trying to eradicate by talking about the conversation. That if in a class, imagine your young children right now, they go to nursery. I dropped my boy when he was younger to a nursery. They love my little boy. Little girls, they all white. Yeah, junior. Then they start to
player.
Yeah. They start to go into year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and they start to tilt. They start to change. So we cannot now talk here when it's adults already, whilst our kids are not being taught properly. What's happening in there between the age of 5, 6, 7, 8? What's happening? What is there happening? That is the problem we have. So if we can talk about sport or politics or society or whatever, but the white supremacy is really the main problem that we need to really educate our kids in schools and in society, and have podcasts, and not podcasts as such, podcasts with the parents. Yes, podcasts with the parents, open discussion. Let's just talk about it. How do you understand being black or being white? What is it that you taught or you thought is the case? If we discuss those situations, then when our kids goes to school, when they go to football ground, cricket ground, rugby ground, the mentality is not already channeled to think, I am white, I should get better. If you ever get to a football ground and you're for the first time, you look around to see who's good here. You give them a ball just to see who is good. Because you also want the same position, isn't it? That should be the case with everyone. When the kids are growing up, before they go to year 8, 9, 10, where right now, if you see the kids who spoke on Sunday, some of them, they're like year 9, year 10, year 11, whatever. They're experiencing racism at that age, but they always, necessary, it was all happy days, which means people are not born with that mentality. Society is teaching people to pick race and to sit on mainly on white supremacy. Going back to grassroots football, I remember coaching Hope FC the year we won the championship. Remember we won the championship?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we won the league. We won the Devon League, League 3, League 2, I can't remember it was. But during that season, the chairman for Devon FA, we were having sometimes, like we were talking about how we speak. Like Nick touched on this, we're different people, white and black. We're totally different. Let's not hide about that. We're different in terms of our mentality, our culture. We're different, but we coexist. We live in the same world, but we are different people. So sometimes some Nigerians, for example, in my own race, black people, but Nigerians, when they speak loud. I think they're shouting. But if you don't click in your head and understand that, you think it's being aggressive. Now the referee is now saying, go out, red card, you're out. Then there's now that Hope FC, they're very aggressive. But that's not the point though. You're not educating yourself to understand how these guys speak. So that's grassroots football I'm talking about right now, since we said you also talked about grassroots football. So we struggled that season to extend, this is what, 2012. I think 2012, 2013 season. We struggled. We ended up winning the league anyway because we had good players that season. We played very good football. But that was not the point. The point was we complained to the FA. Ian? Yeah, it's called Ian. The Devon FA.
Ian Leonard.
Ian Leonard. We complained about the service we're getting from referees and some touchline fans, right? Do you know what he said? That's 2012. Video your games. That's way before the VAR applied in Premiership 2019, 2020. You want us to video our games to prove what we were saying.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So himself as well was not also educated. He didn't also understand how to deal with of course, being Ian, we know Ian is 50, I'm sure 60 or something now. Yeah. So himself he never had to experience in such a team in such a team of minority in his league, for example. Maybe it was the first time, second time, I don't know. But he told us to video our games and send those to him to show that we are suffering some sort of disadvantage because we are a black team. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we can't change that. Going back just to close your show, I know you've gone over. Let's just change the mentality of white supremacy in our society, mainly to start with our children. Thank you for having me.
That's right, guys. Like I said, we might even have to do a part 2 because I think we could probably go on for hours, couldn't we?
I think we should.
We can do a part 2 next weekend maybe, and I'll put part 1 at the end of this one.
100%.
I'd like to thank you all for coming on. I'd like also, obviously it's free plug for me, but all of you to share it on Facebook, and I'd like to see the different responses from different people. I think that'd be quite interesting. I think we could have a chat about that and the next one if we're going to do a next one. Because I think because we're all different backgrounds, we're all different friends with people, it'd be quite interesting to see what they have to say about it if they can make it through Tandai's first 10 minutes without falling asleep. I'd like to thank Ashel, Brian, Nick, and Tendai for coming on tonight. And I'll see you all soon. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Peace out.